Welcome back to Mining Stock Daily. Ian Wagner here with a corporate update from our friends at Yukon Metals. Yukon Metals is a gold and copper explorer with multiple projects across the Yukon. They trade on the CSE under the symbol YMC and on the OTCQB under the symbol YMMCF. And they host a market cap of roughly $63 million Canadian. And we last spoke with Yukon Metals in June, so I would encourage any listeners that are new to the story to go back and check out previous episodes and learn about what Jim and his team are doing up there. With us today is the CEO of Yukon Metals, Mr. Jim Coates. Jim, good to see you. Welcome back to the podcast.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so you guys put out some news this week, and I'm going to just turn the floor over to you. Tungsten is the word of the week. You guys are staking the Tummel tungsten project covering 3,100 hectares, 150 claims. Tell us about that, what that is, why you did that, and just kind of what you're seeing there.
Yes. So Yukon Metals is primarily a copper, gold, skarn, and porphyry explorer. That's our focus, and that's what we're drilling right now. But we have a substantial tungsten portfolio, including the Risby and Clea properties, which have been historically drilled, and a number of early stage properties that are close to those two. But we're along this geological belt that's very prospective for tungsten. And so once we realized that we had this fairly significant tungsten component to Yukon Metals, we started to look around to see if there was any other discoveries that had been made but were unstaked in the vicinity of our existing claims. And we found this trend that was a couple of 100 kilometers long that extended north from Risby into the central part of the Yukon, and at the northern end of it was this Tummel showing. And Tummel had been discovered in the late 1960s by Union Carbide, and Union Carbide was one of the big U.S. industrial metals and manufacturing companies at the time, and they had been exploring heavily in the Yukon during the Cold War, primarily for aerospace tungsten components. And they were very advanced for their time, using a lot of geochemistry, geophysics, and the rewards of that were they found some of the major North American deposits, including Fireweed's Mac Tung deposit, on the same exploration campaign that they also discovered Tummel. And so we realized that this was not just a valuable showing, but there's the zone around Tummel was also worth looking at, because the actual exposure from the ground was only a several meter wide exposure of rock running up with grab samples up to 1.56% tungsten trioxide, which is quite high. That's a mineable grade. So we're going to be doing more work in that area. Our plans are to go back out once we have a permit in place and continue with geochemistry, geophysics, and early stage exploration.
Yeah, you mentioned Risby and Clea, and really this gives you, I think, 5 tungsten properties if you include Fox and Gem and Ava. So kind of a district scale land, package or a series of properties there. You mentioned, your initial kind of efforts there, sampling, prospecting. You got to wait for permits to do that. How are you thinking about sort of balancing, the tungsten efforts alongside of what you're doing at Birch and AZ with the gold and copper, and just kind of how you're going to cadence those efforts?
Exactly. So shifting back towards the copper gold part of our portfolio, we just wrapped up our initial drill campaign at AZ with several holes into our priority target on that property. We're awaiting results from the lab on those. We've also done a 3-dimensional IP and resistivity survey, as well as a drone magnetometer survey on AZ. So we'll have a lot of clarity on what's going on at that property. And then Birch, we're currently drilling targets on Birch. We've been drilling for about a month and a half there as well. And we followed exactly the same methodology at Birch. So drilling at the same time that we're doing three-dimensional IP surveys and getting the drone magnetometer out there. So with those three layers of data, we can really determine whether we're vectoring towards a system or away from it, and then adjust our drill placements accordingly.
Okay. And Birch is when we spoke, I think in June or in May, there was a new target right at Birch, that possible source of the porphyry, I think 2 kilometers off of the drilled skarn. Is that, just to refresh my memory and sort of maybe the listeners as well, is that where you're drilling now?
So we're targeting that. We drilled the existing skarn, which we knew the skarn was there, and that from drilling last year. And now we are placing the targets for drilling on this what where there's evidence of a porphyry zone to the south. And that's where we've overlaid surface geochemistry, seeing the molybdenum highs, tellurium highs, radiometric high, magnetic evidence, and the induced polarization surveys. And where all of those overlap, that's where we put the drill holes. So
Okay.
we're doing that targeting right now, and then the rig gets moved down there.
Okay. Got it. So done drilling at AZ, drilling at Birch. So like while you wait for those assay results, I guess maybe do you want to any sort of just you know, thoughts or feelings or color around how that drilling went at AZ? Everything kind of goes smooth, and what you're excited about coming back there, and then I guess just looking forward sort of the rest of the summer, kind of what should people expect, and kind of what do you guys what's on the rest of the horizon?
The drilling went really smoothly this year. And as I've mentioned before, I used to be a driller, so I still have drilling nightmares. That didn't happen this year. It just we had continued smooth production. The drilling went really well. We were able to get some really deep holes into the system, which was nice, and it wrapped up before I was ready for it, which is not always the case. So I'm really happy to see how well our team performed out there. Just all the contractors and all the Yukon Metals staff came together and just pulled it off seamlessly. Same thing with Birch. We got a number of holes in where we wanted them. We had one or two stuck rods, things like that, but minor in the grand scheme of things when it comes to running these remote field projects that are so logistically demanding. So yeah, I'm very happy with how all of our team worked on this year.
Great. And that was, I think, roughly a 5,000-meter campaign across the two properties, is
Across the
that?
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, roughly 5,000 between the two.
And so assays, September-ish, kinda early fall, late fall, depending on just the lab, or what do you expect in there?
We are actually already starting to get some results back.
Okay.
So midsummer for those results. It does take time to process them once we receive them and just to understand what we're seeing. But yes, we'll have midsummer. We'll have assays back from the early part of the AZ drilling. We should have the geophysical results ready to go midsummer as well. So there will be news flow coming out this year. And then based on what we see in those assay results, we can decide whether we are doing a September drill campaign, retargeting, and then going back into where we really see the centers of these systems, or whether we redeploy the resources.
Right, and probably a good point to remind people that you guys had come off a fresh financing round of, I think, a $13 million that closed in June, if I'm right, and
Exactly.
then
Yes.
so you guys are cashed up to kinda have this optionality around your many projects that you can decide where you wanna target and drill, and, um, so that's great. I think, yeah, I guess just kinda the last question. I mean, it sort of what are your big priorities for the remainder now that we're solidly in, or at this early stage of Q3, kinda what do you want to accomplish this quarter, and what should people kinda really look for?
So now that we have significantly more data than we had even a month ago, we'll be able to really firm up the AZ and Birch stories. So we'll be able to convey what we saw and what our plans are going forward. The next big step is looking at this tungsten portfolio because, as we've discussed before, the prices of tungsten have had a huge run up in the last 6 to 8 months based on 80% of the supply traditionally coming from China, and it's no longer coming from China, plus huge demand, just as tungsten is one of those critical metals that you absolutely need for many military, aerospace, and industrial applications. And so new supply has to come from somewhere, and we're seeing just a lot of interest in these Yukon Metals tungsten properties. So we're going to be shifting our focus towards the tungsten somewhat, doing some more work on the Risby property, which has previously been drilled, but we'll be upgrading our knowledge on that with starting, as we always do, with drone surveys, LiDAR, magnetometer, surface geochemistry, and just getting a better idea of what's there so that we can move forward.
And a quick question on Risby. So Risby, there's historical drilling. Are you permitted to drill there and explore there, or do you have to wait for things? And what does the permitting timeline look like for Tummel?
So for Risby, that's permitted. Tummel, we applied for Class 1 for several weeks ago when the original staking occurred. And so that's in process. Usually the Class 1s take a month to 2 months. We wouldn't want to drill Tummel because that's way too early.
Yeah.
We would start again with drone work, geochemistry, geophysics, get a better idea of what's in the vicinity of that high-grade outcrop and proceed from there.
Great. Yeah. Well, listen, Jim, I think that's great. A place for us to leave it today. It sounds like you guys are going to have some additional news coming out here in the midsummer as far as results come back, and we'll look to catch up with you when those are released.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time, Jim. That is Jim Coates, CEO of Yukon Metals. They trade on the CSE under the symbol YMC and on the OTCQB under the symbol YMMCF.
The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decisions.